Hi, I'm Melissa from the Hug Strap. I'm here today to have a conversation with Bryson Tarbet. Did I say
Yes.
that right? Okay, good. From thatmusicteacher.com. And I would like him to tell us all about his wonderful blog and podcast and why he started it. So before we get there, can you just tell me how long you've been teaching and what kind of brought you to become a music teacher, and just kind of give me that background first?
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation. So I'm currently in my fourth year of teaching elementary music, but I did have a gap year where I spent it working as a one-on-one aide with students with disabilities, which has been a wonderful experience. And it's been quite a journey the last few years, especially in education. But I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and it's been quite an adventure every day.
Great. So when did you start your website management?
Happened by accident. This thing, it kind of spiraled out of control a little bit. So it started in that gap year when I was working outside of the music classroom, and I felt really I missed it a lot. I was really looking forward to that connection to allow me to connect in the music world. So it all started with me creating an Instagram account specifically to follow other music teachers and basically live vicariously through their class through Instagram. And then when I got my own classroom, I kept posting about it, and I kept talking, and it just kind of kept growing and growing. The podcast itself, that music podcast, grew out of Instagram lives that I would used to do. I used to do a midweek check-in every Wednesday, and this was back when you couldn't save an Instagram live if you had a guest. So I started bringing guests on, and I'm like, oh, these conversations are so wonderful. I can't just get rid of it. So we started the podcast, and it's grown a lot. We have a blog that's attached to it. We have the podcast that goes with it. We have courses and other stuff, and it's been a lot of fun, and a lot of it's been great to just connect with other music teachers, because that's essentially why that music teacher exists.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I noticed you actually have a couple of people that contribute to your blog and your podcast. I mean, did they approach you because they really liked what you were doing, or was this like people you already knew? How did this work out?
So it's another one of those things, just growing through the Instagram community, the music teacher Instagram community. I got to know a few people, and as I started realizing what I wanted that music teacher to be, I realized that my writing, I don't like writing, and I personally don't enjoy doing blog posts. So, but I understand that there are a lot of teachers that really find those valuable. So I reached out to some educators that I knew of in the music education world that had very specific specialties, and I asked them if they would be willing to share some of their content on the blog. So I've had some blog contributors for about a year now. I have 4 blog contributors now that create content that it's in their specialty area, that I wouldn't necessarily, even if I enjoyed writing, wouldn't necessarily be able to write the same type of content, and to help other teachers in that specialty as much as they can.
You know, what I found interesting when I was going through it is that even though you say that you wouldn't be able to write these, it didn't feel like it was outside of what you're already doing. Like, it felt like it was kind of like it fits in well, is what I would say. Like, the voice is not so different or something like that. Like, who is this person writing that? This is obviously not you. It was, it was actually, I had to look and go, oh, okay, this does seem to like all fit in well together.
For sure. And I think that comes down to, when I was growing my team, is making sure that the people that I was surrounding myself with, and people that I was allowing to create content under that music teacher, fit with my values and what I believe in education, and what I believe that students deserve, and kind of having a lot of the same values, I found has really been helpful when it comes to, what type of content we should create. Or what type of content is in need out there, is because we all kind of see things in a very similar way, even though we have very diverse perspectives.
Right. Well, it's just such a nice thing, because especially with the pandemic years that we're now into, I imagine connecting online is like a really helpful thing, because you maybe have you been in your classroom? Did you have to stay home at all, or?
I was only virtual for a very, very little bit of time. But even with, being in person, so many of us music teachers, we are the music teacher. So we can be stuck on that music teacher island. So It's been wonderful being able to connect with other music teachers, whether they be on my team or otherwise, and just kind of talk to people who get it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've taught privately a bunch of different things. I actually went to school for art, so that was like what I thought I'd be doing, as be a professor, and I did that for a few years until I realized how little you get paid as an adjunct, and that it was not something I could live off of. So that's when I started all of my online businesses, and Since then, I've picked up. I teach Pilates and I teach ukulele and all that stuff, and it's nice to be able to connect with other people who do that. Like I love going to ukulele festivals for that reason because I'm like, oh, good, I can pick up on some cool tips or other ways to teach the same material. So I imagine that's what makes your thing so special is that you can kind of. I mean, it's so interesting how like. You can stumble upon in the internet all these different little things and be like, oh, here's that one thing I was looking for. I mean, that's amazing. So I mean, it's a really high quality website and blog. I mean, I got stuff out of it, and I wasn't looking to do that. I was just trying to prepare for the interview.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Okay, so what's the number one problem you face being in the music classroom?
I would say the very consistent problem that I face and a lot of other people face is that being stuck on Music Teacher Island. If our district's giving us PD, most of the time it's not music PD. If you're getting content specific, if you're getting music specific professional development, you're probably in a really big district. But if you're in a district like mine, there's one other elementary music teacher. Like we don't have that kind of numbers to have that content specific professional development. And that's why I think so many music teachers, especially elementary music teachers, feel so underprepared to be elementary music teachers because for better or for worse, our undergraduate system typically prepares us for the ensemble, teaching ensembles. So getting us isolated and not allowing us to really understand what we need because we don't know what we don't know, and that's why I love being able to connect online. And that's what got me through my first year of teaching was this online community that allowed me to learn what I didn't know and to try new things in a way that I wouldn't have if I hadn't seen someone else try it first.
Right, that's great. Could you talk just a little bit about you said you had that gap year where you taught with students with disabilities. Can you just talk about that? Because I thought that was like just a really awesome thing that you had on your website, and it's special. It's not just like this. There's this way to teach this. I mean, that's something that like if you're in that position, you're like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I need help.
For sure. So I ended up actually doing my student teaching weird. So I finished my student teaching in October, and then because of just like how universities work, I didn't technically graduate until December. So I had this gap time where all of my courses were done, but I didn't have a degree, so I technically didn't have a license. So, but I had an apartment and like jobs, or like bills and things. So I ended up working as a substitute educational assistant for the district I student taught at because I was allowed, I was able to get a sub license for that position. And it was a lot of uncertainty at first. I even during undergrad, I hadn't worked with students with disabilities much, and most of that was kind of academic discussions. But to this day, I believe that working with students with disabilities, taking that gap year and working with those students in that way, really changed my trajectory as an educator. It granted me so much context about how the education system works, but also how to work with students with disabilities, how to include them in the music classroom, how to make sure that everyone's set up for success. And it's an experience that I truly would not replace for the world.
That's great. Do you have any tips for other music teachers who are facing these similar challenges and haven't done it before?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things that you can try. A little shameless plug, if you head to thatmusicteacher.com/disabilities, there's a free guide there that I have some of my best tips and tricks, as well as a foreword by the wonderful Lauren Morsinkowski about why disability isn't necessarily a bad word. But the main thing that you need to do, and I would say kind of start off, is to get to know the student as the student. There's so much that you can do, with a different, specific diagnosis or this and that, but getting to know what the student likes and dislikes and things like that can be really helpful, as well as reaching out to the, intervention specialists, the occupational therapist, anyone else that's part of that child's education team, to get more information, because for better or for worse, we only see the kids very infrequently, and we have so many students, so obviously there are definitely some challenges there, but I would say if you're just trying to set up your classes in a way that allows students to express themselves and to show their answers, show what they know in a variety of modalities, that is what's going to best allow all students, but specifically students with disabilities, to be successful and to show you how can be musical.
Great. Do you use ukuleles in your classroom?
So I have a wonderful tragic story. My entire career, I've been trying to convince my admin to purchase my middle school, my 5th and 6th grade school, class set of ukuleles. And I finally got it approved in 2019.
Oh no!
And then the world and and obviously, districts shut down all spending. We didn't know what was going to happen, so they got nixed, and they have not made their way back, unfortunately.
Oh, that's
But
a shame.
I do use my own personal ukulele a lot.
Okay.
So I actually bought my ukulele when I was an undergrad. I was working at a lab preschool, another experience that completely changed my life. But I started doing, music with Mr. Bryson at the end for the last 10 minutes. So I bought myself a ukulele and, taught myself 2 chords and led some music. And now I use it a lot with my preschool students, some of my kindergarten students, with some of my self-contained students with disability classes, as an instrument to accompany myself and the students. And I absolutely love it because it's accessible, right? It's not super loud like a guitar. It's not super, it's not like a big instrument that I need to lug around with me. And it's easy. You teach yourself 3 chords, maybe 4, and you're good. You can do, especially in the younger, beginner music land, you learn yourself 2-3 chords, you're good to go. And that's what really I like about ukulele. And that's why I want ukuleles in my classroom, is because not only are they accessible to students to learn, but if students wanted to purchase that instrument, if they're fairly financially accessible. And that's something that I completely draws me towards ukuleles, both me personally and as something I want to add to my curriculum.
So I noticed on your website that you said that you did not, I guess you weren't really big into piano early on. You now are a private piano instructor, but it wasn't your first instrument. What was your first instrument?
So I've been singing forever. The first actual instrument I learned, I started playing viola in 5th grade, started playing the French horn through 6th grade, and then played both of those all the way through high school. And then obviously when I went to college, got a little busy, didn't want to do all the things. Ended up playing a semester of percussion in college for my degree. That was interesting. But yeah, so I've been very musical in different ways, and now somehow I enjoy playing the piano, which, if you follow my story at all, is not something I ever thought I would do.
So why don't I ask you, you said the hug strap had changed your way of teaching. Is that because it allows you to move?
So yeah, that whole thing about having the ability to move around while you're teaching is very important, especially when you're trying to wrangle a bunch of kindergartners. And so I immediately knew my first year teaching that just holding the ukulele wasn't going to cut it. So I took a piece of twine and I wrapped it around the neck of the ukulele, and I literally had my my ukulele supported by a piece of twine. And I was talking about, I did an Instagram story or something where I was talking about what I was doing, and I had that. And one of these music teachers called me out, and he's like, "Is that a piece of string?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it helps me." He's like, "No, that's not great." You should get the hug strap. It has all these these patterns and stuff like that. So I looked it up, and I'm like, "Ooh, I found this one with these squirrels on it." And I'm like, "I need this in my life." So I bought it and I put it on my ukulele. It is amazing. I'm legitimately not even a sales thing, but legitimately very surprised how it has not discolored or anything over the past 5 years.
That's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Has changed my teaching. Way more comfortable than a piece of twine.
Anyway, thank you so much for talking. Before I let you go, is there any one last plug you want to do for your site, or anything in particular that you love about your site that you want to share with everybody?
So yeah, I would just love to have you part of that music teacher community. Again, you can grab that free guide about students with disabilities at thatmusicteacher.com/disabilities. I'd love to chat with you on Instagram at thatmusicteacher, or you can listen to me on the podcast, That Music Podcast, releasing new episodes every Wednesday.
Great. All right. Is there any other places where they can follow you on social media?
Most places I exist. Instagram is my main place. You can also find me on Facebook as well as at That Music Teacher.
Okay, great.